If you're already lucky enough to have seen Spider-Man Homecoming, you'll know that Marvel has achieved everything they set out to the moment they sat down with Sony to thrash out a deal for the Wall Crawlers movie rights. They not only made a standalone movie worthy of the iconic character, but also tied it to the MCU in brilliantly organic ways without it ever feeling forced or manipulated. I had fun, you had fun, your mum had fun, but there's no time for all of this chatter because I'm Ben from Whatculture, and here are 45 Spider-Man Homecoming Easter eggs and references you probably missed. 45! Number 45. DODC. The film starts with two flashbacks, initially setting up how Adrian Toomes became the Vulture. As he and his crew pick at the wreckages left in the wake of the Battle of New York, representatives from the Department of Damage Control turn up, led by Tyne Daly's Anne-Marie Hogue, wearing her immediately familiar green outfit from the comics. The DODC are the same company from the comics that will spin off into its own comedy TV show. Number 44. The classic Spider-Man theme. The film starts with the new Marvel Studios ident, and there's a familiar musical accompaniment. The logo plays out with a modernized orchestral version of the classic 1960s Spider-Man TV show theme over it. That's the version that was teased a few months before release and was assumed to be in the film itself. Number 43. Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. After Spider-Man has done his bit for Tony in Germany, we see Stark and Happy Hogan dropping the youngster off at his home in Queens, with Peter asking enthusiastically when the next mission will be. Stark's response, "Why can't you just be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man?" of course references one of Spidey's most famous catchphrases, as well as Peter David's 24-issue run of comics from 2005. Number 42. Peter's Locker. The question of how the Spider-Man Homecoming title might parallel the comic book that it was taken from was a big topic of conversation when it was announced, but there does appear to be a nod to the comic's most famous setup, the symbiote suit that would become Venom. Homecoming came out in May 1984, introducing Peter's new black Spider-Man suit. In November of the same year, the revelation that the suit was alive came in The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, number 258, escalating the events towards Venom's debut at the end of the decade. Perhaps it's a little obscure, but Peter's locker number is 1184 in a possible nod to the symbiote revelation from the climax of that Homecoming comic arc. Number 41. Bruce Banner's cameo. Peter's school is a monument to science and technological excellence, and as such, pictures of legends in those fields appear around the school, with the likes of Darwin, Einstein, and Edison appearing. Among their portraits, though, is one of Bruce Banner, whose work is clearly cherished in the science community, despite the fact it turned him into a monster. At another point in the school, we see a shot of Tony Stark's father, Howard Stark, as well as Abraham Erskine, the man responsible for Cap's super soldier serum. Number 40. Peter's classic rolled-up mask look. In Peter's friendly neighborhood montage, he leaves a message for Happy Hogan confirming that he helped an old lady who brought him a churro to thank him. As he talks, he has his mask rolled up in the classic look Peter Parker frequently adopts in the comics when he's eating or drinking. Number 39. Loki's eyeball machine returns. The ATM heist at the start of the film features the first real look at the tech the Vulture's gang have built and sold to other hoodlums in New York, and it seems they took inspiration from a strange source for one. The gang use a huge tracker beam-like weapon to lift the ATM machines out of the wall before one of them turns it on Spider-Man when he fights back. It's basically an upscaled version of the contraption Loki uses in the Avengers to remove the museum curator's eyeball. Number 38. The secret invasion gag. That heist scene actually includes a number of references and gags. Obviously, the gang are all wearing Avengers masks, but specifically they're based on Silver Age versions of those characters, and the scene references a sequence from Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Bagley's Ultimate Spider-Man run. It also feels like a secret invasion gag. Not only are bad guys masquerading as Avengers, but the poster in the background also cheekily references identity theft. Number 37. Peter Parker, Mets fan. When Peter sneaks home after taking down the ATM heist, or at least stopping it, destroying the sandwich shop and allowing the gang to flee, we get a good look inside his bedroom. It's chock full of geeky references to his hobbies, including a nod to the comic book character being a fan of the NY Mets. Number 36. Star Wars. Despite the fact that Spider-Man couldn't name Hoth or an AT-AT in Captain America Civil War, he's now clearly a massive Star Wars fan, as his bedroom is full of toys. He's got vintage Star Wars action figures on a shelf in his bedroom. Obviously, Ned brings along his Lego Death Star. There's a giant AT-AT and C-3PO figures on his shelves, as well as an X-Wing tucked in there too. Number 35. Michelle's book. Zendaya's Michelle is an excellent character who snarks from the sidelines, questioning modern schooling conventions and generally being a delightful malcontent. During the first shots of Peter at school, when he tells Ned about the Civil War mission, she can be seen in the background reading a copy of Human Bondage. That's a notable book because it's a story about a young man whose parents die and who is sent to live with his aunt and uncle as he struggles to find his calling. Number 34. Cap's cameos. Throughout the film, there's a few excellent cameos from Captain America. The first was him giving a PE lecture in the style of an old government PSA, and later we see him delivering one on sexual health. The costume he's wearing is the same one designed by Agent Coulson in The Avengers. Number 33. Ned is Garnkay. Jacob Batalon's Ned is clearly based on Garnkay Lee, Miles Morales' hyperactive classmate and friend from the Ultimate Universe. In both cases, the character knows his best friend's secret identity and is a super intelligent support for him, or man in the chair. Number 32. Betty Brant. Like all great movie schools, Peters has an internal TV news network with a news show presented badly by Betty Brant and Jason Iannello. Both are from the comics. Iannello debuted in 1995 in Untold Tales of Spider-Man #1 as part of Flash Thompson's popular kids crowd who picked on Peter Parker, and Brant is far more famous. She would go on to work at the Daily Bugle, appearing in the Sam Raimi movies, played by Elizabeth Banks. Number 31. The Ant-Man Spider Army gag. When Ned asks Peter if he can command an army of spiders, it's hard not to immediately think of Ant-Man and his special abilities, but even more specifically, it's a gag that Spider-Man himself is played up to in the comics. In Marvel Adventures, Peter terrorized a bank robber and made him surrender simply by claiming he could summon spiders. Plus, there was actually one Spider-Man who could communicate with insects and spiders, Kane Parker, who went on to become the second Scarlet Spider. Number 30. Civil War in school. As Marvel are always keen to prove, the major events of the MCU send out real-world shockwaves, but the exploits of the Avengers were so notable that they've become part of the school curriculum. In the background of one of Peter's classes, you can clearly hear a horribly disinterested history teacher talking about the Sokovia Accords. There's another reference too. When Coach Wilson introduces Cap's physical ed challenge video, he introduces it with a casual, "I'm pretty sure that guy's a war criminal now." Number 29. The Back to the Future clothes. The opening act obviously sees Peter looking after his local community, and we get a look at how he rather ungracefully changes into his Spidey suit in a back alley, frequently losing his backpacks in the process. We also get a look at some of the suit's built-in practical tech. When Peter presses his chest, the suit automatically shrinks to fit his body snugly. And where have you seen a young hero preparing for an action sequence by putting on and adjusting his self-adjusting clothing in a back alley before? Back to the Future. Number 28. Stan Lee's cameo. As is the norm, Stan Lee appears in his usual cameo role in Homecoming, though it's not a particularly memorable one. When Spidey sets off a car alarm while apprehending a guy who's trying to get into his own car, the car alarm brings out his neighbors who poke their heads out of their windows to berate him. Among them is Stan Lee playing an old man called Gary who complains and then flirts with an older lady on the other side of the street. Oh, Stan. Number 27. The origin and backstory hints. Mercifully, the film doesn't go into either the history of Uncle Ben's murder or Peter Parker's transformation into Spider-Man, but it does cleverly mention both of them in a roundabout way. As Ned asks Peter a million questions about being Spider-Man, they share a brief conversation about him being bitten by a spider. That's it. No more detail than that, and it's not needed, to be honest. And as for Uncle Ben, the only allusion to him is Peter mentioning everything she's been through in reference to Aunt May. Number 26. Shocker. As revealed ahead of the film's release, there are two Shockers in Homecoming. The first is Jackson Bryce, who was the Shocker in the Spectacular Spider-Man comic, and the title is then handed over to Herman Schultz, who inherits the Shocker weapons. The more observant of you will notice that they're actually Crossbones' gauntlets from Captain America's Civil War, suggesting that Toombs' gang operated as far as Africa as well as in the US. Number 25. Ferris Bueller. After being invited to a party at Liz's house, Peter decides to appear as Spider-Man to try and improve the street cred of himself and Ned. It doesn't go to plan though, as Spidey's entrance is interrupted by an explosion that marks Bryce's testing of weapons to show a client. Peter races to chase Bryce's van full of weapons after a confrontation, vaulting through gardens, encountering kids in a tent, a man barbecuing and telling him his food smells delicious. It's a fairly faithful redo of that scene from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which can actually be seen playing in the background at one point. Number 24. Mac Gargan. After Peter foils one of Vulture's gang's raids to get more tech and scrap, he and Phineas Mason, obviously based on but never actually referred to as the Tinkerer, discuss their options for making more money. Mason mentions they still have enough raw materials for the Gargan tail, which is obviously in reference to Mac Gargan, aka the Scorpion, whose suit included a weaponized tail and who we know operates in this universe. We actually briefly meet him during the ferry deal and a post-credits scene. Number 23. Is Donald Glover Prowler? Donald Glover's character has remained a mystery almost the whole way through the marketing campaign until it was revealed that he was playing a burglar called Aaron Davis. He's also from the comics, and his rap sheet shows off an alternate title when Spider-Man accesses the crime database. On there, his known aliases include the Prowler, who is the masked vigilante from the comics who turned from a life of crime to being an ally of Spider-Man, and another of his known aliases is listed as Brian Pichelli, a combination, it seems, of Brian Michael Bendis, who created Miles Morales, and Sarah Pichelli, the artist who first drew him. Number 22. Miles Morales and the Bat Voice gag. When Peter interrogates Aaron, a sequence that includes a dig at Batman's voice-changing habits to intimidate enemies, he mentions his nephew and wanting him to grow up in a safer world. In the comics, Aaron Davis' nephew is Miles Morales, otherwise known as the fan-favorite ultimate version of Spider-Man. At least we now know he exists. Number 21. Suit Lady. As was revealed just before the film came out, Jennifer Connelly has a secret cameo in Homecoming as the voice of Spidey's new suit, who appears after he and Ned remove the training wheels protocol. She's initially referred to as Suit Lady before Peter settles on calling her Karen. This is Connelly's second appearance in a Marvel movie after she played Betty Ross in Ang Lee's Hulk. So there you go. Number 20. Mean Girls. During the academic decathlon trip to Washington that Peter uses as a front to follow Toombs' gang, the finals that he's supposed to be playing a key part in for his school ends up going to a tie-break, sudden death situation. The question is asked and Michelle comes in with a Hail Mary answer of 0 and the crowd goes wild. Now it might be accidental, but it definitely feels like a callback to Mean Girls with the outsider coming up with the victory-sealing answer that happens to be 0. Number 19. Sylvia Plath. After the quiz, the kids go to the Washington Monument for an enlightening tour and certainly not almost death, which Michelle sits out on in objection to the role of slavery in its construction. At this point, we get to see another of her intellectual inspirations. Here she can be seen wearing a t-shirt with a print of a Wikipedia image of tragic poet Sylvia Plath. And elsewhere, Peter can be seen wearing a "The physics are theoretical, but the fun is real" shirt, which suggests he's a Big Bang Theory fan. Number 18. The Spider Tracer. As part of the many augmentations Tony Stark adds to Peter's suit, he's able to send out a couple of spider-shaped trackers, a small one that attaches to Bryce's fan, and the larger one in the middle of his chest that acts more like a drone. In the comics, Spidey uses small electronic spider tracers to track objects of interest or targets who might leave his direct line of sight. Number 17. Jim Morita. Morita? I don't know. After they return from Washington, Peter is hauled into the principal's office to answer for his noticeably poor attendance and commitment at school. The principal is played by Kenneth Choi and is called Principal Morita. I don't know. He's a direct descendant of Jim Morita, his grandfather, who was one of Captain America's Howling Commandos in Captain America: The First Avenger, who actually was also played by Choi. Number 16. The car registration. As Spidey confronts Michael Mando's Mac Gargan and his goon buddies, there's a car in the background. The license plate on that car cleverly links to the first appearance of the villain, the Vulture, in Amazing Spider-Man number 2, published in May 1963. Number 15. Iron Man's new suit. As seems to be the tradition in MCU movies featuring Iron Man, Tony Stark has been tinkering on his own most famous creation, as well as working on other suits for Spider-Man. He debuts a new look in the movie with far less red and much more silver elements, called the Mark 47 armor. It's clearly based on the Iron Man suit from the Ultimates, albeit with a different helmet shape. Number 14. The suit. The exchange between Iron Man and Spider-Man that sees the former take back his high-tech suit as punishment for Spider-Man almost getting lots of people killed on the Staten Island ferry is very definitely a callback to Iron Man's own past. He says, if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it, and that's wisdom that Tony earned in Iron Man 3, which essentially taught him that he's more than just his suits, and which called back to the Avengers when Cap challenged him with his "big man in a suit of armor, take that off and what are you" line.
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
Number 13. Risky business. After Tony takes the suit from Peter, he goes home to concentrate a little more on being a kid, opening up emotionally to May about losing the Stark internship and crying for his lost opportunities. She sets about getting him ready for his homecoming dance, dressing him and teaching him how to dance, and at one point, Peter slides across the floor in his socks with the camera framed by a door in a loving tribute to Tom Cruise's entrance in the iconic scene from Risky Business. Number 12. The Scarlet Spider. Having seen that shiny new tech-filled suit taken off him, Peter is forced to resort to his homemade version that debuted in the YouTube footage in Civil War that Tony Stark somehow gets hold of. By the look of it, though the colors have been inverted and the face mask is more obviously homemade, his suit looks to be based heavily on Ben Reilly's Scarlet Spider costume, albeit with a more street-level spirit. Number 11. Toombs' coat. Michael Keaton's fur-trimmed flight jacket that he wears while he's not in his flight suit is obviously a nod to the original look of Adrian Toombs in the comics. It's the only way they were really going to get a visual reference into Toombs' iconic but but quite silly Birdman outfit after all, and clearly the fur trim is the film's allusion to that look. Number 10. The repurposed tech. Toomes' terrifying vulture suit is obviously the culmination of his scavenging of key Avengers sites, and at various points they mention the Battle of New York, and that provides evidence of where lots of the tech they steal comes from. The engines of Vulture's wingsuit look to have repurposed the Chitauri air bikes from the finale of the Avengers with their familiar blue glow. The giant cannon Vulture uses to try and kill Peter on the ferry is also familiar, and we even see Vulture with an Ultron drone's head, plus many more bits and pieces. Number 9. The Amazing Spider-Man number 33 cover. When Peter goes to confront Toomes at his base, he's unwittingly trapped as Vulture sends out his suit in drone mode and targets the supporting pillars of the warehouse around where Peter stands. The roof crumbles on him, burying him under a massive amount of rubble, and this appears to pay homage to one of the most iconic Spider-Man covers of all time for The Amazing Spider-Man number 33. Number 8. The plane's cargo. The climax of the movie ultimately sees Vulture trying to steal from Tony Stark's unmanned, cloaked plane that he's using to transport equipment from the old Avengers Tower to the new facility upstate. The cargo includes a number of Easter eggs. Happy mentions that there's a Hulkbuster armor on there, as well as a prototype for Cap's new shield. He also mentions that they're carrying Thor's magic belt called Meganjord, but Happy can't pronounce it and neither can I. Number 7. The Cyclone. Near the end of the film, Peter stops a plane from crashing into a building by guiding it out towards the coastline and ultimately onto the Coney Island beach strip, where it harmlessly bounces along the sand. In the background, we see the Coney Island theme park, which isn't destroyed, thankfully, but whose presence calls back to Captain America's Civil War. In that film, Bucky Barnes revealed that Steve Rogers threw up after riding the Cyclone roller coaster, which we can see as the plane crashes. The roller coaster, not the vomit, obviously. That was ages ago. That was decades. Number 6. MJ. So after months of speculation, it turns out that Michelle is in fact MJ. In the finale, she revealed that her friends call her MJ before she gives Peter a loaded look that very much suggests she's going to be a romantic interest for him after all. As an added bonus, in the background of her revelation, you can see the school's tiger mascot appear, which rather pleasantly calls back to MJ's first words to Peter in her comic book debut: "Face it, Tiger, you've just hit the jackpot." Number 5. Pepper's t-shirt. This might well go down as the oddest Easter egg in the history of the MCU. At the end, where Peter visits the new Avengers facility to be unveiled as an Avenger by Tony Stark, he's wearing a t-shirt with a science gag. On it, two atoms are talking to each other, with one saying it's lost an electron and the other asking if it's positive. Weirdly, it's also the same t-shirt that Pepper Potts wears in Iron Man 3 when she and Tony were in bed together, and that's odd. Strange. Number 4. The other suit. The culmination of Peter's scene with Tony and Happy at the Avengers facility sees Tony invite Spidey to become an Avenger. Tony's offer includes a new suit too, with the gold and red color scheme of the iconic Iron Spider suit from Civil War's comic arc. That was actually the color scheme Marvel were intending to use for his Civil War debut before they decided that actually his first experience demanded his original colors. Number 3. Pepper Potts. She appears after Peter Parker turns down Tony's Avengers offer to wonder, annoyed, why Tony and Happy let him leave. In response to her question about what they're going to tell the press, Hogan takes out an engagement ring that he's been keeping in his pocket since 2008, when the first Iron Man was released, and suggests Tony proposes. It's a funny gag, particularly as Happy and Pepper were engaged in the comics, even if she laughs it off. Number 2. Scorpion returns, and possibly teases Sinister 6. The first post-credits scene sees Adrian Toomes sent to prison, where he encounters Michael Mando's Mac Gargan once more, who reassures him he doesn't blame him for the catastrophic injuries he received during the ferry disaster. He's seen with a huge metal brace pinned into his arm and facial scarring, and he wants revenge, but revenge on Peter Parker specifically. Gargan says he's heard a rumor that Toomes might know who Spider-Man really is, and says his friends on the outside would like that information. Could that be a hint of Sinister 6, who Gargan was a long-term member of? Ultimately, Toomes says he doesn't know Peter's secret, but it definitely sets up for a return for Scorpion in the sequel. Number 1. The final stinger. After appearing in a couple of PSAs shown throughout the film, Captain America appears once more against the backdrop of a white screen at the very end of the credits. In contrast to the sequel bait of the first scene, this is a stinger that is designed purely to mess with the audience. In it, Cap talks about the virtue of patience and its value to heroes, but also says that sometimes it can seem like a burden being asked to sit patiently for something that ultimately proves not to be worth it. He's talking in a very meta, very tongue-in-cheek way about the whole post-credits culture. He then asks, how many more of these? And I feel exactly the same bloody way, Cap, I really do. And that's our list. Make sure you subscribe to the Whatculture YouTube channel for more lists like this, and don't forget to visit whatculture.com for daily news and articles. I'm Ben from Whatculture, and thanks for watching.